Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Pretty good.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. I really, truly appreciate it. And I'm casual today because I took my bike here. Not my two pedals, but my motorcycle. But anyway, nowadays you got to, clarify that because everybody's on bicycles. So, in any event, thank you for having me out. I know my time is brief, so I'm going to try to be brief and just touch base on where we're at. Before I dive deep into that, I want to let you know, and most of you know, and a lot of you have already been involved, that we're in the middle of the city budget. I'm the vice chair of the city budget and finance committee as well. So I truly appreciate your support and your input as this process unfolds, particularly the budget advocates and those that have been involved. With that, we had neighborhood councils up yesterday and are keeping at least the same dollars going forward as they were last year, not being touched, which is a good thing. The other thing, what I did yesterday is put out a motion as well to restore funding for the Congress of Neighborhood Councils as well as the budget day, which is about $20,000, which you guys need. So that was my motion yesterday in budget. But diving deep into the streets and what we're looking at. First of all, as you know, we put out, Joe Buscaino and I, as Chair of Public Works, put out a motion to look at a bond proposal to fix every failed street in the city of Los Angeles. We pulled that back very quickly. We wanted a little bit of shock and awe. I think we got it. Need to rattle the cage, or I guess break an egg to make an omelet, as they say. And so we did that and got a lot of shock and awe, and got everybody's attention. And it was a wake-up call to say, wow, that's a lot of money. What are you looking at doing? And so we quickly pulled it back with, it, quite frankly, at the urging of the neighborhood councils is where that came from as well. And so I thank you for that. This group said, hey, hold on, time out, let's look at this thing. We said, great, we'll pull it back and we'll look at it. Ever since, we've been going out to every neighborhood council group, we've been going out to have evening meetings, we've been taking the Public Works Committee, which I'm not even on, but I attend most of them anyway, and we've been taking those around the city to get your input. And we've gotten a lot of input, a lot of concerns, a lot of still shock and awe saying, what are we going to do? And why isn't the general fund paying for it? Or are we paying enough taxes? Are we paying our gas tax or property taxes? Enough is enough. We agree. So the two newest council members, Joe and I, are looking at this and saying, we've inherited a nightmare. We're all in this together. We've got 8,700 miles of failed streets. Let me say that again. 8,700 miles of DNF streets. Now what that means, and putting into perspective, is we've got 28,000 lane miles in the city of Los Angeles. 28,000 lane miles. You can drive around the entire earth, that's 26,000 miles. A third of our streets are failed. That's a third of those, 28,000 lane miles. A third, meaning 8,700 miles, that's the equivalent of Oakland, California, 3 times. So that's what's failed. The cost is what we're looking at. We are actually funding right now, and we have been for several years. Once we had an inventory, because for a long time we didn't have an inventory, we were funding the maintenance portion of the streets that are in A and B condition, that are in fair condition, because that's called a slurry seal program. It's done every 5 to 7 years. The cost is $26,000 a mile to slurry. Once it slips into a failed condition, what we consider a failed condition, once it slips into that, at a D condition street, and it needs to be resurfaced, not reconstructed yet, but resurfaced. That's a D street, a C low C, or a D street. If it's in that condition, it's $325,000 a mile. So you've gone from $26,000 to $325,000 a mile. Once then it slips into a F condition, a failed street completely, where you've got baseline failure and you've got to remove everything and repack it and reconstruct the street and re-engineer it. Now you're at anywhere, and starting price at $650,000 a mile. So the backlog of those 8,700 miles is the $3 billion backlog we're looking at. What we're not fixing right now, that's a 60-year backlog, are those failed streets. So with that, the streets were not maintained from about 1950, 1945 to 1990. That's what's creating the backlog. And there's a lot of reasons and a lot of finger pointing that we can do. And I can get into that for an hour of what happened and why did it happen, or we can also spend the time wisely and look forward to say, what are we going to do about it? It affects all of us greatly. In fact, there's a study that comes out every year on every city in the United States. We come in number one, once again. Number one, at the highest cost of automobile ownership and maintenance of any city in the United States. The average cost in every city, the average in every city in the entire country is $350 a year per car. Not per homeowner, not per renter, not per business, per car. The cost in Los Angeles is $750 a year per car because of the condition of the streets. They take two factors into consideration, streets and weather. We've got great weather. That's not what's costing the deterioration of our cars. So those are brakes, rotors, drums, alignments, all of those things. So looking forward, I know I don't have a lot of time, and I really want to open up to questions. I want to get to the questions. Looking forward, we've got this backlog, and about within every 10 years, that price tag doubles. So 10 years ago, when the study was done to see how much it would cost to fix the backlog, the price tag was about $1.5 billion. 10 years before that, going back 20 years, it was $700 million. Today, that price tag is $3 billion. So what we're proposing is to come up with a revenue stream that would be earmarked and dedicated specifically and only to fix the streets. It cannot ever be used for anything else. Since we put it out there, and with the Citizens Oversight Committee, not just an oversight committee of the CAO and the council president and the mayor, but a true Citizens Oversight Committee with neighborhood council members and stakeholders citywide that would weigh in on this. So what we're looking at is different revenue streams that we can create the money to do this. Not to mention, it would create a lot of other benefits, tremendous benefits. And there's a long list of benefits that I can get into as well. There's a direct return on investment because the money you're actually paying out, you're getting back in savings of your car, in property values, environmental benefits, putting in the master plan of the bike lanes, re-engineering left turn lanes, all of the other benefits and traffic improvements we won't even get into because there's a long list. With that, what we've done is pulled it back and said, we're probably not, and this is the input we're getting, don't tax just property owners. Let's look at other mechanisms, other tools. Maybe it's a hybrid and a combination. Some will be a geo bond on property taxes. Some will be in the form of a sales tax. Some might be in a user's tax. Some kind of hybrid. But whatever that hybrid might be, we would want you guys to support the idea of moving forward. So we're not doing anything without the input from neighborhood councils and stakeholders and business groups and advocates and everybody else that's been involved citywide. And we're looking at different models and revenue streams to do that. So with that, in a bond or any type of bond, the voters would lock this money in where it would specifically be used only for that purpose. And so that was one of your questions that you asked. The other question was, how much is the debt service on the bonds? Well, it depends on what we ended up bonding for. First of all, right now, interest rates are at an all-time low. In fact, the lowest for muni bonds that they've been in 40 years. And so we're in great shape in that regard. But if we don't move forward, we don't know exactly what that debt service is going to be. It depends on when we pull the trigger and move forward. The voters have to vote on this. This cannot be done by the city council. In fact, this one on the ballot today, it would require a 2/3 passage, not that 50% plus one like we did on the sales tax. Your other question leading to the sales tax was, and if I'm getting all these right, I think I'm getting all the questions you emailed me. The voters didn't trust a sales tax. We're certainly looking at the budget now that we're going through. Clearly, we probably didn't need it after all. What makes you believe that the voters would support or trust moving forward on this type of initiative, which is far more? Well, the answer to that is I didn't support the sales tax either. I think I was one of the few council members that voted no to put it on the ballot. But that's not the answer in terms of where the voters are coming from. A sales tax would have gone just into the general fund of the city council, or also known as the black hole of the budget, and could be used for anything. Pensions, healthcare costs, raises, anything, and only up to the council and the mayor. The way that we're talking about doing it is securing it where it can only be used, as we have done, by the way, with every other bond. And every bond, every major capital improvement bond has passed in the city of LA. And they've actually, every single project has come in on time and under budget. If you looked at Prop Q for public safety and building police stations and fire stations, we built 4 additional police and fire stations that weren't part of the original bond because they were on time and all under budget. And the savings were used. It can still only be used to continue doing that, so they built more. We built, I believe, 3 additional libraries that were not part of the original library bond because the it was on time and they were all under budget. And so this money would specifically, whatever model we got into that you guys wanted to move forward with, if that's what you decided to do, what we would do is ensure that it was only locked in and protected for that purpose and could never be used for anything else. And so that's how we would secure it. And I think that's what the voters would want to see their money go towards. How do we maintain it in perpetuity, I believe was the last question. And so how we maintain it in perpetuity is we used to not have an inventory of the streets. In fact, from 1940, it was 45 to 1990, as I suggested earlier, that was where the gap came in because they didn't know what streets were in what condition. They had what was called the windshield test back then. And the windshield test, I kid you not, was Joe and Steve driving in a van. Joe would look out the window. Steve would say, hey, what's the condition of that street? He'd go like this to the window and look and go, I give it a 4. He'd write down, okay, that's a 4. Literally, that's how they measured the conditions of the streets. They didn't even know what streets we had. There was no true inventory in the Bureau of Street Services. So what we've done, no, there was one other question you had after that, I remember that. No, so we're minute every single question that you wrote me last week. And they would actually, that was how they did the inventory. Now we actually have a system, and it's done by lasers, and it's all spelled out on our website. You can look at all this stuff, where we go in and we measure every street and drive every street. It's done every 3 years. They do a full inventory, and they actually measure the actual condition. It's called the Pavement Preservation System in micropaver. Micropaver, which is revolutionary technology, we deployed in 1998. It was fully functional in 2002, where we had a full inventory of the streets and each condition. It's all, by the way, on the website where you can go on your own neighborhood council. It's actually split up by neighborhood council on the Bureau of Street Services website, or a link off of my website, where you can actually go in and look at your neighborhood council street by street, and it's color-coded. Whether it's red, it's a failed street, and it's green, it's a good street, or yellow, it's a C street. And you can see it all. You can know exactly what's going to be fixed, when it's going to be fixed, or if it's not going to be fixed because we're not going to do anything. It's red, we're not doing anything right now because there's no money. That's that backlog. So with that, the last question you asked is how do we ensure that we can actually, the right hand knows what the left is doing. Where are we going to start this? How are we going to manage these crews? I believe you asked, and in terms of striping, you pave one street, it might take 6 or 7 months to get another department to come out and actually stripe the street, as we've all seen. So we're looking at that as well. In fact, on the Budget Committee just the other day when we had the Bureau of Street Services up and Department of Transportation. Department of Transportation is the one that actually does the striping. Bureau of Street Services fixes the streets. That makes no sense. So I asked Ruth for a report back the other day and said, I want to see these consolidated by January 1st and move striping into street services, which makes sense where it should be. And so they got a lot of applause from my colleagues on the committee as well, so we're moving in that direction. The workloads will be done and regionalized, so you won't have crews just running around like they do now throughout the entire city. So we're going to probably start off in 4 regions and work inward, but we're looking at that so we can create some economies of scale as well. And then how do we maintain it in perpetuity? The cost for maintenance, again, is significantly less. And we have enough money right now that we're putting in. In fact, we're putting more money every year out of the general fund because we're losing the revenue that's coming in that's dedicated to fixed streets. We have essentially 3 main categories of revenue for street repair. Gas tax, Prop 1B, and right now Measure R local return. Those are the funds that are earmarked specifically, and then anything else is supplemented out of whether it's general fund money, ARA funds that we had during the last several years that are now gone, Prop 1B funds that are now gone. That was last year was the last year of 1B funds, and Measure R funds, which is a minimal return, but some of that money is actually going into fixed streets. The problem with the gas tax is the gas tax originally, and we have one of the highest gas taxes. We have the highest of any state in the country. It's about 36 cents per gallon. But it's per gallon, number one, and it's not per miles traveled. It's not on the dollar amount. It's per gallon. Well, when they passed that 30 years ago, we were getting a lot more money per mile driven, if you will, than we do today, because a lot of people have smart cars and hybrids and electric cars. And so if the gas tax back then at 36 cents, and I'm going to give you a quick breakdown on that as well, per gallon, and you were only getting, say, 8 or 10 gallons a mile, we were getting a lot more money at the time. Of course, they weren't going into fixing the streets clearly, and that's another issue that I have. But than you are today, if you're getting 30 or 40 or 50 miles a gallon, we get very little of that. In fact, of the 36 cents, 18 cents off the top goes to the federal government. 33, or the other half goes to the state and county. We get 3 cents. It's 2.98 is what we get in the city. So we actually get less in our city, even though we have a higher gas tax in the state of California.
That's based on how much per gallon?
That's not the dollar amount.
No, but I mean, the taxes go up.
The taxes don't change.
Right now we're close to $4 a gallon,
okay.
Whereas before we were less than $2.
The gas tax portion of gasoline has not changed. It's based on the gallon, not the dollar amount per gallon.
Okay.
That's the sales tax.
Okay.
Okay, which most of that goes to the county, some to the state, and a little bit to the city for police and fire and everything else. So having said that, that's the gas tax portion. So who here drives a hybrid? Shame on you. You're paying less into the system than no. And did any of you carpool? Well, then you're really not paying into the system. No. So what? All kidding aside, these depleting revenue streams also are a problem. So the level of maintenance. Well, with the new technologies that they've perfected, they weren't doing slurry 20 and 30 years ago. That expands the life of the street almost exponentially. And so with that, as long as they slurry and maintain a street, you've seen that in the last, when they started that in 2002, they've been coming into neighborhoods and they'll slurry like clock every 5 to 7 years. They're out there. In fact, your neighbors or you are calling us and saying, wait a minute, you just paved, because a lot of people don't know the difference between slurry and reconstruction and resurfacing and all the other things we do to fix fissures and pothole repair and all. So they'll call us and say, well, wait a minute. You just paved my neighbor's street, but you just did it like 5 years ago, and you haven't done mine in 20 years. What's up with that? You say, well, your street is a failed street, and you're not even on, you're about a 40-year, 50-year, maybe even a 60-year backlog. But guess what? We're going to be back and doing your neighbors in another 5 or 7 years. Sorry. Because it's so much cheaper. We actually have the money. We're funding 800 miles this year in street maintenance. We have enough money to maintain once it's in good condition, because the efficiencies and maintenance are so much easier and cheaper and economical versus the reconstruction and repair. So I think I hit all your questions.
There was one though that I had asked, so because we thought Luciano was coming.
Oh, okay. Joe got a secret question. I wasn't.
Well, it wasn't a secret question, and we made it very clear. Was that, and this was when it was Joe coming out, was that, are you willing to commit to have one neighborhood council member on the Citizens Oversight Committee?
Absolutely. And so
Willing to commit to that? I'm
willing to commit to this. Whatever the oversight committee is, when you say one neighborhood council member,
one seat be specifically for neighborhood councils.
No, I would go beyond that. I would actually go beyond that. I would say one neighborhood council member per region.
Well, so that's on the local, but then isn't there one oversight committee?
We haven't crafted any of it. This is a blank cage for you guys to figure out. You tell us what you want to do. We're wide open.
Okay.
So I would suggest not one council member to fill, or one neighborhood council member to fill that seat on an oversight committee. I would suggest you have one from the valley, one from the west side, one from Pedro, one from downtown.
Well, because being greedy though.
Well,
it's trying to get us in the door.
You got a blank piece of paper.
Okay.
The door. You guys opened the door to this discussion, and so I think that would be great. And the other part, though, I would suggest is you guys crafting what the other seats should be. Not just neighborhood councils, but we need some experts on there as well. We need somebody from the cycling community because they need to be a stakeholder. We need, an environmentalist. So I would look at, an expanded view beyond just the neighborhood councils and come back to us with an idea. We're wide open.
Well, we're all elected neighborhood council members, so that's what we look at, and we also represent our stakeholders.
As long as the council president supported the idea, I'm wide open to that. But he's my boss, so I report to him.
Okay, so let's start with questions. Have we gone over enough of, these were the questions I developed for him so that he'd be able to give a full presentation to this group. Are we satisfied? So let's start with the questions.
I'll try to be quick.
All right.
Can I go first?
Question.
Yes, City Clayton from Summerlin County. Okay, I want to bring this back around to where the tax and the cost to those of us who are struggling in the city. And the reason why is because there's so much that this encompasses.
Yes.
And on our streets, we have tow trucks.
Yes.
We have buses. We have used car businesses. They're tearing up our streets. We have big rigs that are tearing up our streets. We have poor planning. The city planning department is allowing for dense, affordable housing to go in, and we have no place for these people to shop, which puts more people on the road. So, getting back, and no place to shop. So how, I want to get to the tax part that this was all about, to charge people more. Where do we stand with that? Because people can't afford it if they have to do all these things and put up with all
Good
these
question.
within their community.
Got it. Good question. And so where do we stand? People can't afford it. How do we think we could put something else out there? I get it. Absolutely. There's no question. And that's why, I mean, this would have been done years ago if it wasn't a matter of cost, and if it wasn't a matter of putting it on anybody's backs to do it, or if it was a matter that the city actually did what they were supposed to do starting in 1940. So we can go through all that. At the end of the day, we're paying for it now. And this is my point. We're going to pay for it one way or the other. If we kick the can down the road, that price has gone up, literally, and I've got all the numbers, and I've got the reports, and I'm happy to show them to you. They were in 2002, when the first study was done, the cost for the backlog was $1.5 billion. Today, that number is $3 billion. It's projected to be $6 billion 10 years from now. The bottom line is this. For your cars, for your buses, for your goods that you're buying at stores, for all the businesses that in the transportation, that they're paying for the maintenance. Who do you think they're passing that cost on to? So at the end of the day, we've got a study that we got from Professor Leamer that he did on this. Professor Leamer from UCLA, who heads the forecast, who's phenomenal, a great economist. And we've got this on our website, and he spells out the ROI, the return on investment. This is the first bond ever proposed that we're aware of in the history of the city, where the people who would be paying it, in fact, would have a direct return on investment year one. Now, it's a curve. It goes on a curve where you're only bonded for what we borrow, and as we borrow it. So it's a 10-year plan. The borrow would be $300 million a year for 10 years to get to the $3 billion. The apex, or the height of the payment, the highest highest payment at year 10 is when we've actually finished the entire city. So you've lowered all your costs in repair and goods, by the way, because goods and goods movement is all passed on to the consumer. You've got return on investment in value of property as well. So property values are good. So he spells all this out and does a great job in saying, we went to him and said, if you had a blank piece of paper and you had a magic wand and you were mayor for a day, what's the one thing you would do today? And he said, all right, let me bring that to my class. Let me talk to other professors. Let me come back to you. Came back to us and said, I'm going to write a white paper on this. That was one of the best questions I've ever gotten. And we posted the white paper. And the white paper basically says this. If I were mayor for a day and a magic wand and I can fix anything in the city, I'd fix every single street. And we bond for it, and here's why we would do it. He spells it all out. So take a look at it. Now, we're not, again, advocating towards a bond. We're not sure what direction we're going to go in. That's why we want the input. So we're not wed on any one particular thing.
And then John?
Yes, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Would you be willing to appoint the most effective manager in the city of Los Angeles, and this was proven by the Annenberg School of Southern California, Bill Robertson, who is the former head of...
I know Bill well.
Would you be willing to appoint him to head that commission? Would
So-
you trust him?
So great question and great answer. If we can legally, he's got a conflict of interest now, but Bill is the guy who I actually worked with to develop this plan, just so you know. And he's no longer with the city. He was by far one of the best general managers we've ever had.
Yes.
So if you talk to Bill, if you still have a relationship with him, he helped me put this plan together. In 2002, Bill Robertson wrote a report called Professor Pothole.
Yes.
Professor Pothole was the one that talked about how we fix every street. He's the one that came up with a $1.5 billion price tag. He's the one that developed the slurry seal program. He's the one that brought micropaver to the city of Los Angeles, where we have the only machine of any large city right now in the United States that we designed and had built, where you drag it through a street, it rips up all the aggregate and remixes all of the materials together so we can relay it down as we go. So it's environmentally friendly. We're not dumping all that in a landfill. Bill Robertson created that. So he's the one that helped create this plan. So I would love to give him some role because I absolutely agree with you.
John, you're missing.
And then we'll come around.
As I was listening you speak,
It occurred to me that I think you've got the cart before the horse in one sense.
Okay.
You're talking about neighborhood council participation in a committee to work as an oversight.
Yes.
I think a more pertinent area where this group could be of use is in a committee to help you in figuring out how to get A, transparency, and B, equality in terms of paying for these things before everything goes to city council.
Which is what we're doing, in fact. So, which is why I'm here as well. And so we've taken all the recommendations from this group, in fact, to say pull it back, go out, meet with the stakeholders, meet with all the neighborhood councils, take the public works committee out as well for people to show up and participate, to get questions, concerns, and ideas on the record. We've been gathering all of that. Which is, by the way, and thank you for bringing that up, because we did have the cart before the horse. That's why we did pull it back. And so we are doing that. That is this process. And by the way, we're not talking about pulling the trigger on this and moving forward in a month, or 2, or 3, or 4, or 5. We're actually looking at, if we do this, it's not going to be at least for another year, or a year and a half. I mean, we've got time. And so we're taking advantage of the time. We're not going to wait until we're down the road a year from now and then say, okay, let's give 90 days for neighborhood councils and stakeholders to weigh in on it. So I'm here this morning on a Saturday, a year and a half before we would even consider doing something. So I appreciate that.
Let me be a little.
I know we don't have the time for the dialogues, and I get what you're saying, but I want to get to everybody.
But I am trying to say that if you look at the mayor's budget committee,
Yes.
where you had a select group of people who in-depth work with the people who are trying to work through the problem. It's, I think, much more effective than a scoping type meeting where you have everyone for 15 seconds give their idea.
We're actually doing both. We are doing both. But thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Libby Gutierrez from Coastal San Pedro. I have 3 things. One is that when you said what happened, that you wanted to move forward now, is I want to know, is there any way of recouping any of the money that was taken for our roads? That's number
Good
one.
question.
Number 2, you said how reasonable the bond, the interest may be. I really need to know presently what that interest rate is because, as you know, public schools is paying a huge amount in interest. And then number 3 is, you talked about securing the monies.
Yes.
I need to know if it's been secured now because we are still collecting money.
Right.
Has anything been put in?
Okay, let me answer all 3 of those points. Very good questions. One, we can't recoup the cost. And many of you remember, I'm sure, when we were fighting Sacramento because they were taking our gas tax. If you remember the years of the gas tax money. Then when we finally won that fight, and we started getting our gas tax money, they came in with an idea that they created a loophole that said if they declare a fiscal state of emergency, they can then borrow our money for 2 years.
Right.
So they did. But we've recouped the portion they borrowed, which went back directly into fixing the streets. It was a one-time borrow. But going back all those years, there's no way to recoup that. The legislation's been fixed in Sacramento to give us our 3 cents. Really, that's really what we were talking about, 3 cents a gallon. So we're getting that now, which is actually going in the streets. In terms of knowing exactly what we're going to be bonding for and the interest rates was your other question, I believe. We've got all that spelled out on the PowerPoint. It's all on our website. So if you want to go to ce12.org or to Joe's website, I think his is ce15.org. Well, I don't know. Everybody's got a different thing. It might be, Joe's School. I don't know. But my ce12.org is on Facebook. We have links. And we've got a website that spells all of that out as well, and all those other questions. It's all very specific. Yes.
I'm from East and Northeast LA. One of our problems, typified by Huntington Drive, is that we get 60,000 cars a day passing the boundary between LA City and San Gabriel Valley.
Yes.
San Fernando Road, as Glenn did. Figueroa, all of these that we really don't even get access to Huntington Drive. We get maybe 6,000 cars added to the 60+ thousand. How can we get the commuters from outside of the city of Los Angeles to contribute, other than Measure R that little bit and some of the others?
So with that, one of the things we're exploring is that question comes up a lot, is a type of user tax, in other words, a user's fee. for the people who are using it the most or driving through our city, but those who are really driving the most, if you will. We don't have a legislative fix, a local fix for that. We can't increase our portion in the city of LA of gas tax. The other issue we get back when we start even talking about it is that it's a regressive tax and it hurts the poor more because they commute more. So we're looking at what options we could gate our entire city, but I don't know that that's reasonable. There are two
called congestion pricing.
Congestion pricing as well, and a lot of states and cities are looking at that, but it hasn't been worked out. It'd take an act of Congress to figure out a way to do that. There are 2 cities in California that are actually gated communities. The entire city is actually a gated city. Can anybody name the 2?
Hidden Hills,
That's one.
Bell,
No, Bell is not.
Bell is not?
Bell Canyon? Or the city of Bell should be gated, but we don't.
Yeah.
Well, technically, their former council members are gated, but that's hardwired. Hidden Hills and Coto de Casa in Orange County.
I have a great concern if you're not going to be doing the failed, really serious street frontage genetics of the Van Nuys Neighborhood Council. A few years ago, you might remember that there was a huge sinkhole at the intersection of Sataquay Street, on which I live.
Yes, it took a fire truck.
Pasco.
Yes.
And a car went into that.
Yes.
And had that happened at night, more cars would have gone into that.
Yes.
Yes.
Mine could have been one of them.
Yes.
It turned out that was a 100 or something year old pipe fit.
Right.
And we had called to tell them about leaks that we saw, but nothing got done, and then that happened. So my concern is, because Van Nuys is one of the oldest cities in the valley, if the older serious streets aren't going to be fixed, how many more sinkholes might we have to face, and how many more people might die because that's not being
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. We brought that up a lot. In fact, there's been a lot of studies that have done that have been shown, and one of the things that would be best is if we can actually coordinate this effort. And this is a whole other discussion and dialogue. We've started having these discussions with Public Works and Bureau of Sanitation, which maintains our infrastructure for our sewer systems. And which, by the way, under Measure O, we've bonded for to fix a lot of those issues as well. But with that, the sewer system, if you've got a weak street, a failed street on top of an old sewer, the chance of getting the pressure and the vibration from the street has been studied that you're deteriorating and putting pressure on the pipes outside of what the DWP tried to do with the every other day watering thing. We won't even talk about that, but which caused a lot of hemorrhaging and the other issues. But the street is an actual layer of protection as well from stopping that and from stopping further erosion. So it's a very good point. And so we're looking at the ones that haven't been done as we reconstruct the streets to put the new sewers in at the same time, which would make a lot of sense. Yes, thank you. I think that was, we have one last question. I'm getting pulled because my boss is here. Council President is here, and he's got to leave it.
Okay, every time an inch of rain falls,
I'm his favorite.
every time an inch of rain falls in LA, we get 7 billion gallons of water running down off of our streets and into the ocean.
Yes.
So wouldn't this be the right time to evaluate some innovative engineering to figure out how to use that water to recharge
Brilliant.
the aquifer,
Brilliant.
not just runoff?
You've actually gone to our website. So we have an environmental plan on this as well, and we've been working with some of you might know Andy Lipkiss from Tree People and others. And one of the ideas is as we re-engineer streets, when we reconstruct a street, not just a slurry, we just put a top coat down and put new stripes on it. When we reconstruct a street and rebuild a street, it's not just ripping it out and putting it back down. In fact, if you've been through this in your community where they've rebuilt and reconstructed a street, you know full well you get different turn pockets when it's all done. You get different gutter systems when it's all done. It's fully re-engineered. You get synchronization and right turn pockets that are done more effectively and efficiently. But a lot of the environmental issues that we're dealing with stormwater runoff, the way the street originally was designed was called a crown. And a lot of the streets in the city of LA they're not completely flat. They're crowned a little bit for water runoff. And that's really great on your alignment. Once it becomes failed, then that's another issue. But and you have baseline failure on a crown street is a nightmare. And we experience that every day. So, you're driving through. Anyway, so that is going to have tremendous benefits when we re-engineer the street for stormwater capture and runoff, where we can re-engineer those as well. And we can actually, what we're looking at is there may be some federal grants that we can match to fix some of these issues where we actually even get more, is we put money into capital infrastructure improvements because of the environmental benefits. So thank you for that.
My name is Pete Nicholas. I'm a stakeholder in the Rampart Village Neighborhood Council.
Excellent.
I concede that transportation is a critical issue for the city. But I don't think that people riding in cars have any more human value than people that aren't surrounded by cars. To what degree will sidewalks next to these streets be included in this project?
Great. Let me take this as the last question because it's a little bit of a longer answer, but I'll try to be brief. So legally, you can't bond or borrow or come up with a dedicated revenue stream of money, if you will, for anything that's not inventory, anything that's not part of the original work plan. So we don't have an inventory for sidewalks in terms of an inventory where it's registered and we have a database and we can tell you, like I explained, where you can go on the website and look at the streets and the conditions by neighborhood council in every community. We don't have that for sidewalks. It doesn't exist. In fact, last year, Board of Public Works came out and said just to do an inventory for sidewalks would cost $10 million to do just the inventory. And we said, well, wait a minute, really? Can't we create like an app and ask neighborhood councils and homeowners and renters and our constituents and businesses to go out in front of their house and take a picture and we can do our own kind of inventory? So we're looking at different models to do that. But legally, there's no way to bond or borrow any type of capital improvement dollars without a very specific inventory. When they went out to build fire stations, police stations, they said this is how many we're going to build, this is exactly what it's going to cost, this is where they're going to be located, this is what they're going to look like. You have to do that by law. And we don't have that for sidewalks. This year is the first time we've put money into sidewalks, and it's not done yet, but in the current mayor's proposed budget, $10 million. Because we have to do the ADA cuts, we have to do some of the compliance issues, we have to get the critical places that we've been sued at, and the chronic complainers in terms of the legal complainers, if you will, where we keep losing the slip and fall lawsuits. We've got to fix those ones. That's about as far as the $10 million will go. But we've got that's an issue we've got to figure out as well. So I appreciate you bringing it up. Let me close with this. We haven't made a decision to do anything yet. We're looking for your input. I really appreciate your time in inviting me here as well. And we look forward to your participation as we make a decision. Because we look at this, and I certainly look at it this way as well. We're all in this together. This isn't about me or Joe or the city council or anybody else saying, we've created a problem that we want you to fix. That's not where I'm coming from. We've all inherited a problem we don't want to pass on to our grandkids. And knowing full well that even in our lifetime, every single year, we're paying for it now, and the cost is going to keep going up. So we just got to figure out a solution that makes sense for all of us that we can financially afford, and create jobs and all, and improve our neighborhoods. So with that, thank you for giving me the time this morning. I really appreciate it. Be kind to him. It's great.
Next, I'd like to bring up our Council President, Herr Wesson, for the City of Los Angeles. Please give him.
You guys can hear me, right? So I don't have to use that then. Anyway, you should give Mitchell another round of applause. He's very bright, very hardworking, and he's really done a lot of work. He and Mr. Buscaino, where it relates to this bond discussion that's taking place. The only thing that Mitchell didn't tell you is where he got the idea to slow it down a little bit and take it to the neighborhood councils. Somebody else knows. No, he's a good man. He's doing a lot of good work, and I expect within the next 2 months he'll be in an elevated position on the Los Angeles City Council. So Terry, I know that we're a little bit behind, and that you wanted me to chat for a few minutes and then take questions. I think maybe we should go straight to the questions, other than me saying that I have the highest respect for the neighborhood councils that I work very closely with the ones that are in my district. They have saved my bacon on numerous occasions, and they have come up with a lot of good recommendations and suggestions. And they're some of the hardest working people in Council District 10. And it's my honor and pleasure to serve with them. So I look forward to expanding that relationship with the other members of the neighborhood council that are not fortunate enough to be in the 10th district. Let me do the best I can with some questions. I have to introduce, we're only as good as the people that we have working with us. So as soon as Lizzie Gordon quits taking a photo, if you could, that's Liz, raise your hand. Liz works with me, and she's one of the best deputies that I have. Behind her is my Assistant Chief of Staff, Andrew Westall. And when they knew I was coming to see you, they wanted to attend, just in case they could be of some assistance. So, how do you want to do the question? You're going to
Go ahead. He's got a question for the council president. Sorry, Jay Handel. We'll work around.
a good buddy from 100 years ago.
And counting. Thank you. So in the budget hearings, you're seeing that the neighborhood councils are asking for additional funding. And I know you say you think that the neighborhood councils are really important, and I believe, we all believe they are. It's been our contention that over the years, with the budget problems that we've had, that the city has taken some really drastic cuts to the neighborhood council system. Cuts to the point where the department is not actually able to really fulfill its mission in our eyes. So this year, at Budget and Finance, we've looked at some additional monies being put in for support staff, for the Congress, for this great new funding system that the city is looking at implementing in July. Would you support those additional funding items to get the department to be able to truly fulfill its mandate under Charter Section 911?
The department will never be able to function if it's understaffed, and in my view, it is severely understaffed. Now, I do think we will recommend some changes, that we will beef up the staff by a body or two, and then I think give Grace the flexibility with some other items. The one thing that I can say is I do believe the majority of the council is supportive in ensuring that the money that directly goes to the neighborhood council is not shaved. We don't want to give you guys a haircut. In my view, that just doesn't make any sense. The savings are minimal to say the least. So I believe that's what's going to occur. There will always be a group of members that probably want to take all of your money away. So the key is for us to make sure that we have more members of the council that don't share their view. And I think that that's the way we're kind of comprised right now.
Right here.
Yes, sir. Hey, Dr. Williams.
I guess my question is more in the form of a comment of which I hope you'd say I agree. Those of us that are observers of city government are hoping that after the new mayoral election, we may end up with a mayor who spends more time in Los Angeles actually working on managing Los Angeles problems and have a
Oh, I hope not.
and have
I'm the deputy mayor. I'm the deputy mayor today, and I'm not going to cut you off. I want him to just go and stay to July 1st, and then I can do it. I'm sorry, but that was an opening.
and then that we might have a more cooperative relationship both between the mayor and the council, and that instead of, like for the last year, where the council seems to have delved down into a bunch of payback, that we could look forward to a city council that has a greater interpersonal working relationship. For the last many years, as far as our mayor is concerned, and many months as far as the council is concerned, it doesn't appear that city government's been working too well.
Okay, let me respond this way. From the moment that I became the council president, and Mitchell can attest to this, the city council and the mayor's office has worked very closely. I pride myself on really trying to bring people together. I can't speak to what the new mayor's agenda will be where it relates to his or her travel. I know that we will be there and we will do the job that you hired us to do. And what you will also see by the council is you will see that we will be an equal partner with the mayor's office, not a junior partner. So I look forward to working with whoever the mayor is, and when you get along together, when you have discussions. I mean, this mayor and this council for the past year and 3 months, we've done a pretty good job. And I would hope that that relationship will carry over to the next mayor. Both Eric, who is a former council president, knows what it's going to take to work with the city council. Wendy, who served on the council for numerous years in a high capacity as the president pro tem of the council, understands how to work with the council. So I'm very, very optimistic that we will have a working relationship that's in the best interest of the citizens of this city. I hope so, sir.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hi, Sid Gold from Redondo Hills North Neighborhood Council. How open would you be, you just worked with Vicky Cantor
Yes.
on the 2020 Commission, how open would you be to having representatives from neighborhood councils be appointed to these commissions, as well as to city councils and to committees and to commissions from the mayor?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that question because I wanted to be able to respond because I get that question from time to time. When I had various meetings with people from the labor community and the business community, and the idea of this 2020 commission came up, I had a discussion with Mickey Cantor, who, as you know, worked with the Christopher Commission, which is one of the most highly commissions we've ever had, not only in this city, but in this country as well. So we talked about setting up something like that. I said, Mickey, I'm only going to do one thing where it relates to this commission. I'm going to make you the chair, and then I step away, and you form the commission. At that moment, what I should, and I told him to make it diverse and all of this, but at that moment, I should have said, why don't you get the president of the entire neighborhood council operation and appoint that person? I did not do that. I am looking at creating another commission where it relates to, I mean, our turnouts for elections are embarrassing. I mean, I'm ashamed. And not just because I'm African American and people had to die to give us the right to vote, but this country, a revolutionary war was fought to form this country, and we got 20% of the people. I mean, that's appalling. So I am going to create a commission that looks at voter turnout. And on that commission, you will see a representative or two from the neighborhood council. And it's not just going to be a commission of eggheads, so to speak. I'm going to get political pundits. I'm going to get marketing people. I'm going to get the kind of people that can maybe help us come up with a way to excite enough people to come out, turn out, and to vote. But on that, you will see representation from the council. Lizzie, can I get some coffee? Yes, I've seen this person before.
We had a presentation earlier regarding the DWP. People question salaries, which are not comparable to the private sector. And we were told that that is the duty of the city council. So because of the fact that they are raising rates extensively, they have other things that are on the board that's going to cost us more money, what can you do to bring in the rates that are comparable to the private and not so outlandishly high?
Well, rate-wise, we are in
I'm
direct...
talking about employee salaries.
Okay.
They're not in line with private sector.
No, they're not in line with the city of Los Angeles salary.
They say
Okay, but I mean, the reality of the situation goes on way beyond our time when Mulholland and those guys basically developed the city. They created the departments of water and power as two separate departments. And basically what they wanted to do was give them all of the latitude they needed so they could do whatever the hell it was that they want to do. They weren't created the right way, but they were created to serve the purpose of the people that were building this city. And they've been out of line forever since. The one thing I think we have to do now, because of the defeat of Proposition 8, I don't think we can afford any raises for a while. I think it's important for the city. I think it's important for the city to try to, for the next several years, perform like we're some kind of private profit-making company until we fix our structural balance. Now, I don't know if the votes are going to be there to not give raises. We have been, the council has worked pretty well together, and I think we have shown that we're strong and we can go against the unions when they ask for too much, and I would hope that backbone would continue as we move forward, because we have some very, very difficult decisions that lay before us, in particular where it relates to employees.
How many influence do you have over that?
I'm one vote, there's 15 votes, and I have to use all of my diplomatic skills, and I tap dance, and I beg, borrow, and steal, and somehow or another I've been fortunate to get the minimum of 8 votes or 10 whenever I've needed it. But one day the mustard might fall off that hot dog, but we're on a roll right now.
I'd like to get Council Member Engler. He actually has a question.
I have a question, if I could.
He is a stakeholder, remember.
I walked in, I'm not asking I'm asking as a council member, I'm council president with a question, if that's okay with you guys.
Oh, yes.
Put you on the hot seat here. When I walked in today,
That's just like every Tuesday and Wednesday.
That's right.
That's nothing new. He's busy. He's busy.
When I walked in here, the DWP they had a full panel here.
Oh, really?
They had people in the audience, I don't know if you knew that,
Yeah.
sprinkled throughout you guys. Here. I can't get a meeting with them. They're going over the budget with you guys. They haven't done that with us. So how did we get an MOU like they did? So they have to come meet with us.
You smart aleck.
All right, we're here, and then we'll get you, and we'll come back here. Okay.
I was glad to hear
And we'll
the
get back.
characterization of the property tax measure being couched as something that was meant to get our attention. It's very typical that we see things that appear on a Friday afternoon, approximately 72.5 hours before a hearing is going to be had. I think that was kind of one of those cases. There's plenty of other cases where that happens, where it's not easy to respond. It's not easy for the neighborhood council to be able to get anything on the agenda, to be able to have a meaningful contribution to the discussion when there are deliberations going on, whether in committee or the full council. What can you do to ensure that that practice is downplayed in the future, that not just the early warning, but there's other systems where we get more advanced warning so we can have our hearings, first of all, with our stakeholders, but secondly, bring that wisdom, that perspective from all the people who may be more inclined to vote and get involved in the system. If they see that they get more than a minute or two, and if we've spent 2 hours with something in committee and at the full board level, and we bring it down, what about the practice that's been discussed by Bonker and WP things about having a place at the table if there's something that affects one or more neighborhood councils, not just be out at the with the timer, but being involved just like the staff was involved to be able to share the perspective that we've had from our stakeholders.
That's a very good question. I look forward to responding to it. First, I'm just going to spend just a little bit of the time responding to, sometimes stuff happens where you don't have the time and you have to act quickly. That's basically what happened with Proposition 8. I'm going to just give you the political skinny on it. The mayor is one of my dear friends. I would have had Proposition 8 on the ballot in November, but he wanted the extension of R, which I think was called J this time around. When that election was over and it did not pass, there was an opportunity to have a quick discussion and for the next ballot, put Prop A on, which was the half-cent sales tax. And because of the lack of the time, and I know it was hard on you guys, but we had the deadlines to meet or what have you. I say all that to say that there will be some things that come up that you just don't have the time. It's just inevitable, it's going to happen. But it's funny you should ask the second part of that. Several months ago, I sat down with Terry and a group of leaders throughout the city of Los Angeles that are members of the neighborhood council, and we had an exchange, a discussion about how we can provide you with a seat at the table. So I will guarantee you that I will continue to work with Terry because I want to provide you with that. Like I said before we started, before I spoke at this meeting, I love my neighborhood councils. They are sane. They are not, I don't have one horror story where it relates to them. I did one thing when I got into office that I didn't talk to them about, and it just blew up. And if I would have taken that to them, because I had the time, they would have designed, this has to do with a beautification project, right? So I figured I'm going to be Mr. Big Shot.